Yeah. We back with the second transmission of I. We outside today. Where we at today, player?
We at the Moinoi Dome Pools.
Yeah.
Moinoi Dome Pools. It's not actually the Moinoi Dome Pools. It's in Moinoi, but it's the Magaliesberg Dome Pools. This nigga dropped the coal in the water.
Yeah, that's my bad.
Magaliesberg Dome Pools. It's in Moinoi, around the northwest. It's about a 4 to 5 kilometer hike into the pools, as you see behind us. We got the natural pools.
4 kilometers.
Pools, 4 to 5 kilometers in.
Yeah.
And then also 4 to 5 kilometers back out. But it's beautiful, man. First time we did this hike was in 2021.
With the homies.
We came with 2 homies. Shout out Gab, shout out Mello. And we were hiking, you know.
3 of the homies. And Bonolo.
Bonolo too.
Yeah.
3 of the homies. It was 5 of us. We were hiking. We'd never been here, you know. It was just, you know, as homies, we look for cool shit to do. Found a spot online, like, yo, let's do it. Got the permits. Bro, by the time we got to the pools, it was mind-blowing. I'd never seen a river or a stream with natural pools to swim in that was this enticing.
I remember
literally a thought of like, this is what pools in people's backyards
aim to mimic.
Trying to mimic this.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that there's actually pools like this in nature that are like pools.
Natural collections of water along a stream that have rocky formations around it that are actually nice and aesthetic. So you have like a stream that comes downhill and there's a waterfall nyana coming down the stream, and then you have the water that collects over there and like rockery all around it, and it's just
a little pool.
Like a naturally constructed scene that's been put together over thousands, millions, billions of years, man. It's like this priceless shit. But that's where we at, baby. We just thought we'd take it outside.
Yeah, and by the way, I do a lot of hiking. In my hikes, you know, I rate all my hikes. This was my first 10 out of 10 hike.
Fire.
Like, because I have a list of hikes, I rate them, you know, 6, 7, 8. This was the first one I said 10 out of 10, my dog.
But this was the first 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
But last year, we did garden routes. Relative to the hikes and garden routes, this is Magalies. Magalies has a lot of the pools and like hills and some mountains and those types of scenes.
It's just Magalies landscape. Magalies fauna and flora.
And then garden routes. Garden route is along the coast of the Eastern Cape, Western Cape, where you have mountains, but you also have the beach and the view of that.
Yes, and the
forests
and shit.
But I'm sure a lot of those hikes at garden route are also 10s.
And so was Mpumalanga, Blind River
Canyon.
That was also a 10 hike.
That's
so was when I went to
spot.
Drakensberg. There's hikes that are just... And for me, when is a hike a 10, bro? A hike is a 10 when the beauty can't be captured in a moment. It's not you're hiking and then there's one site where it's like, okay,
you can't.
We got to the site. This is it. This is the picture site. When it's a 10, it's like there's multiple sites. Everything is a site.
Every step looks like something you want to stop and take a picture of. But you can't, because you just can't do that. But like, beautiful hikes are like that, man.
Yeah,
beautiful hikes are like that.
Real shit.
What's the wine, my dog? I see we got the natural wine. Homie got the natural wine from Father Coffee?
Yeah, Father Coffee, but they have the wine place is called, what's it called? Wine
bar.
I don't
remember.
Wine bar. Call it wine bar.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't really know the whole, like, how they describe this shit, but they call it minimalist wines. Minimalistic wines.
I guess like minimalist intervention. Yes. Probably processing wise and stuff like that.
Chemicals. Processing. But I haven't actually looked at what it means directly.
Keep the mic close then.
What process is it, like, eliminated from it, you know what I mean? But it's minimalistic. Tastes good, that's all I know.
It's delicious.
Tastes good, that's all I know.
I've never been much of a white wine guy. Generally, I lean more towards the dry reds, the Merlots and so on, and the Shirazes. But this white wine, this minimalist white wine, it's delicious, bro.
It's hot.
Like, it's actually delicious,
nice.
man. It's actually
nice.
Delicious.
Hey, the weather turned out for us, dog. The weather turned out for us. Check the weather forecast like 4 days ago. There's a 60-70% chance of rain. We haven't had rain yet, you know, so that's a good thing.
So far.
A good thing.
Yesterday, there's something I actually wanted to talk about. I've been visiting the bro in Rustenburg because he stays around these sides. We explored, man. We explored Rustenburg and it caught a good balance between the more kind of trap, bougie club scene and the more on the ground, on the streets, kind of more real, rugged scene.
Quote unquote ratchet, but not that, but yes.
Yeah. Quite a good balance of those scenes. It's dope. I've enjoyed Rustenburg so far. But last night when we got home, we watched that manosphere documentary on Netflix.
What's it called? Inside the Manosphere.
Inside the Manosphere.
Yeah.
by Louis Theroux. I think that's how you say his name, but he's like
Thoreau or some
a credible journalist who does documentaries. And he was basically looking into this idea of the manosphere, who are these masculine characters who give guidance and advice to young men and what that's about. There's a lot we can get into regarding that, but maybe it was an interesting documentary, and I think it'll be dope for us to just actually chat about maybe our takes on that, man, because we have perspectives on that shit. You know, so maybe...
And on masculinity.
There's a lot to speak about there, but maybe just from your side, what's something you might want to tap into, and just like a general, some of the views that you got from that and your feelings about that, just quickly, 2 minutes, and then I'll also do my little rant on that, and we can just, you know...
Well, from that documentary, you know, first insight for me, or just the thing I noticed, is that I'm not actually tapped into the manosphere like that. Because a lot of those influences are not people that I follow in any way. Like, the wormholes I've gone down don't lead me to listening to like a person like Sneeko. You know? And generally...
I think it's Sneeko.
I don't know, bro.
I know.
Exactly. But generally that...
Case in point.
What I'm trying to figure out is that documentary and the people it picked. Those to me seem like very extremist individuals in terms of the masculine views they hold. Of like, females must be subservient and men must run the world. They seem like very extremist in their views they hold. My question is, are those the most famous people in the manosphere? Are they representative of like actually what is the most popular opinion in this thing called the manosphere? Or is that documentary actually picking out the people that are extremists relative to what the population listens to?
In my mind, also the idea of the manosphere itself, it speaks to that term, the manosphere. It's a sphere of masculinity and its expression in an extreme sense. So the people who are representative of that idea of the manosphere is the people who exist on the extreme and speak about the expression of masculinity in its more quote-unquote patriarchal dominant form that assumes like the role of masculinity as dominant at an extreme and existing relative to a femininity that is submissive. So those people in that space a lot of the time, they speak to that extreme perspective, which exists in reality. But as we've evolved as human beings and moved away from a male-centered and dominant reality, that extremity, although it'll exist, because everything exists on a spectrum, that extremity exists, but I don't think it speaks to... It's not completely representative of the influences that exist on the modern man and what like the modern man is. And it does speak to something that a lot of people are into and get into, but the danger with consuming that and assuming that that is what men who are looking for themselves and young and who are being influenced by social media kind of tend to consuming and associating with, that's also limiting. But the challenge is when someone who isn't a young man like us engaging with young men proactively and understanding our perspectives as young men, when someone young watches that documentary of the manosphere and they have a certain idea about what masculinity is and what young men are.
They're trying to form the idea.
And they're trying to form the idea of that. It's easy for them to hold on to that as like the modern expression of young men. And therefore then, you know, exist in this reality where masculinity and femininity are always a polarizing thing.
Yes, but then the danger, and I think the societal fear, which is expressed like in that documentary and through people who are kind of against the manosphere, is that people who hold those extremist views actually have influence.
And they do.
And so when someone like Andrew Tate, like, you know, is very extreme. I used to listen to Andrew Tate a bit, and then he's actually extreme.
He's very extreme. He's misogynistic.
He's extreme.
And I don't, as just brews who've seen these terms misused to kind of shut people's views down, I don't even like using the term. I don't just throw that term around. But someone like Tate, who I for some time respected, and even now, I can respect some of the things that he says and does without resonating and loving them. But I acknowledge that he's extreme and he's a misogynist.
It's imbalanced, but there are gems and value to gain from the perspectives of Andrew Tate. But the danger of society is that, like, you know,
not gems. There's gems to gain from the perspective of an extremist like Netanyahu and Donald Trump, who are able to ascend to a high level of power, even though they have very questionable views. But that doesn't mean you endorse them and all of their character.
Kanye West. You can learn shit from Kanye West.
Just with an acknowledgement of the complexity of human life, you take the good with the bad. And that doesn't mean you accept. That doesn't mean you encourage the bad. But you take the gems that you get from it and you use those.
You extract what's good and you leave the rest.
But the fear
is that, for example, a young man 18 to 25 maybe, I think
Impressionable.
society fears that they're impressionable, they're still learning, and they're not nuanced enough in their thinking. They haven't established maybe an understanding of sufficient complexity to be able to listen to such extremist views and understand that some things are right and some things are wrong.
And it's an
you might have an
extremist view.
18-year-old listening to Tate and just taking everything he says.
Yeah.
You're assuming they're like, well, you're not assuming, but you might be assuming they're like you, like, oh, I can listen to Tate and be like, nah, here he's chatting, but that other shit, this guy mostly talks a lot of garbage, but he actually has value to add, and maybe you can respect the fact that as a man
And
he's
that
pursuing
fear-
his truth. People don't always have those nuanced perspectives, and
that
that's
fear-
the danger.
It's justified because as a young brew also who's been on the journey of a young man, you understand the path from like going out of high school and understanding your relation to women and women that you're attracted to, and dealing with the rejection and being made to feel inferior sometimes, and having to work through that, and the challenges of understanding who you are as a man, dealing with rejection and the constant kind of challenges on your identity that society imposes, and having to grow from that without becoming
resentful,
hateful. And the thing is, when you're going through the challenges of a young 18-year-old guy, you don't really have much money. The world is telling you need to have money. The woman that you want, maybe you're getting some of them, a lot of them, the general narrative is like, you're not dope if you don't have money, get your money up, you ain't shit.
and then they're going for the nigga with the car.
The point is,
all of those dynamics.
the guy who says, fuck that, sit down, work hard, these women will respect you when you make money, and then you can dominate them.
It's very appealing.
That can be an appealing thing.
and it gives a clear pathway forward to a world of winning.
exactly.
And so when people perceive that as the pathway forward, when the misogynistic framework becomes the pathway forward to getting the girls and being a respectable
it seems
human
what society.
being.
It seems like what society incentivizes.
Yes. Also because the history of mankind there's a strong patriarchal quote unquote past in which women were kind of dominated. So that danger is real. It's not a theory that
It is.
men might end up now like taking the rights away from women.
an actual
That was
potential
real
reality.
100, 200 years ago. That
That's
was
true.
actually real.
So the fear is justified.
Because it's not that far back when that thing existed. It's like white supremacy and like, you know, the fear is like, it's real, bro. We
But I
got
think-
free in 94. It's
I think-
real.
I think the way forward in the masculine space, also for young men, is like there has to be the articulation and the understanding of the other, like a perspective that we might offer. That people who end up assuming these like hyper misogynistic and extreme masculine views that emphasize man as the dominator, woman as the servant, that's what it has to be. Those people have a logical basis for that argument, and they can rationalize it. And the
And they're
only
smart.
way,
Those
and
people are
they're
actually
fucking
smart.
smart. And the only way to create a more balanced society where men instead of rationalizing and associating with that perspective, associate with a more nuanced and balanced perspective, is by number one, cultivating a balanced perspective where you listen to the extreme feminine and you listen to the extreme masculine and you understand both sides and how they can coexist in a more balanced way that supports and empowers each other. And while doing that, articulating it to people and selling it in a way that is appealing and acknowledges the part of young men that might make them
That's more transcendent
associate
and not extremist.
yeah, but also acknowledges the part of them that can associate with those extremist views, but reels it in and says that's not the only way.
But you see, to be able to say that's not the only way, what does that mean? What does it need, I mean? What does it require? It requires men who are aligned with the kind of principles we'd like to see in our sons. Men of moral stature who
That's real.
winning in life.
Winning in life is important.
You need men of moral stature
who are winning in life,
who have money, who have the ability to get women, who are attractive,
women, who can live the type
who
of
are
life
cool.
that a young man would be attracted to.
And then that guy says, misogyny is not the way, bro.
It's
You
bullshit.
don't have to like lead the woman. That guy who's winning in life and has a moral position needs to be the guy who talks and gains the publicity. Otherwise, if the only guy who has the publicity is the winner who's immoral, then that becomes the guy you follow because that's what's visible.
Yeah, and the thing is also the people who generally tend to do the things that would give them the publicity or chase the publicity are people who might have those more toxic views.
Because publicity and social media kind of incentivizes views over morality and reason. So you
Yeah.
can end up becoming toxic for the cycle and the feedback loop that exists on social media in terms of what actually makes your social media business more profitable.
Yeah.
Incentivize maybe being a bit more cooked. But my question is, who are those men that exist from the media you've consumed who might be like people who actually are cool, are successful in this physical reality you exist within, and embody somewhat moral or transcendent ideals?
That's
and
a very
are
good
men?
question.
Who are they?
'Cause
if you were to request like to a young man, here's some shit you can watch,
That's a good question.
who would it be?
And maybe I'll speak off the top of my head, and these people are also flawed human beings. You take the good with the bad in people. You listening to this, don't act like you're a perfect human being, bruh. These people are also nuanced people who have some flaws. But people
Yes, sir.
who I see in that light to a certain extent, who are human beings, of course. Number one, Scott Galloway. He's a professor, I think, at the University of Stanford and so on. But like a guy who's actually actualized himself on a high level, has made money and engaged with the feminine and created a life that seems appealing and can speak to a balanced view of being a man.
Scott Galloway.
And he's actually winning.
Yeah,
Scott
and
Galloway.
he's very practical and he's not toxic in his perspective.
Who else, man?
Scott Galloway's focus is more on economic and financial success while also trying to get happiness.
Yeah.
Who else? I think Jordan Peterson. I don't agree with Jordan Peterson and some of his
yeah.
extremist views. Not extremist. I wouldn't call him extremist. That's actually the wrong word. But some of his views on politics, they almost West. You can tell he's a person who is born in a Western nation.
And that's
so
actually
he supports.
That's actually
Western
something
agendas.
you see with a lot of these Western quote-unquote people that also we respect because of their depth and intellectual rigor within the scientific and financial domain and stuff like that. But their paradigm is primarily Western. So when they start
because
speaking
that's their
about
tribe.
politics and like
When they start
what they
speaking
think
about the
about a
white
Donald Trump,
genocide or the white genocide,
you
in
see
South
a lack
Africa.
of a nuanced perspective and understanding of the view of the African.
And
the
that's
black
where you
person.
start to see that this is an imperfect human being. But Jordan
Exactly.
Peterson is a
But you take the
transcendent
good with the
human.
bad.
He's a transcendent human. And
He
his
is.
principles.
He's very deep.
He's the right kind of guy. Other individuals, I'd say.
But also you say that, I think it's important that you say that with a depth of understanding and perspective of what he teaches. You've
Yes.
listened to his lectures on the Bible and psychology,
meaning.
and you've read his books. You've read 12 Rules for Life. You've read Those Who Wrestle with God. You've actually delved
more
into
rules
his,
for life also. Yeah.
you've delved into his frame of thoughts with a certain level of intellectual rigor. You didn't just get to that from
To
a
see
surface
that he's
level.
actually a deep, introspective, morally principled and
But who
oriented
else?
person.
Who else?
Who else? So Jocko Willink.
Jocko Willink.
He has the book Extreme Ownership on Leadership. He was a Marine. Very masculine guy.
Extremely masculine
I think
guy.
He's well oriented. He's well oriented.
And he's got more of a nuanced and balanced perspective that's not as polarizing but is masculine.
Yes.
Someone like a David Goggins also extremely masculine on the extreme side, but his masculinity isn't anti-feminism and women, you know?
Yeah, but I think it's very extreme in a sense
is.
of being. It's hard,
But he's more
in that hardness
fitness,
is a thing to learn.
He's more fitness and strength.
And grit.
there's other people
Grit.
also intellectual rigor and science. There's like an Andrew Huberman.
Who else?
But who embodies those things and is actually cool? There's like a guy that I mess with,
I
but
know
he's
who
also a
you're
bit.
gonna say.
I know he's also a bit. He's fringe. He's controversial. Hey, some of
He's
his things
niche.
are a bit out
He's
of the
niche.
box. You might watch some of his things and think this guy's crazy, and I get that if you think that. But Owen Cook is kind of deep.
He's niche.
And he speaks to more of the balance between a spiritual grounding and tapping into yourself as a spiritual being that's one with everything. These are weird things, man.
and pursuing God.
Yeah, pursuing God, but
Alignment with
also
that which is-
being someone who's winning in the reality and the game of
Actually
like
winning.
the body and the flesh.
Making money.
Making money,
Being cool.
and being able to engage with and have dope relations with women that you
feminine.
respect and are attracted to and would want to engage with. So he offers that balanced perspective and it's cool as fuck.
Yeah, I'd actually say on my list, Owen Cook is definitely number one. But just very clearly say that he's weird. He's a fringe and niche
people
character.
might not understand that and they don't have to understand.
He's not
that.
everyone's flavor. Who else? I think those are them.
Locally, I fuck with Peño, but he's extremist in certain ways. He thinks he's God. He's got like his religion. Some of those things are a bit cringe, but just as in terms of like a man who's also a lot of the people who share their perspectives on social media there are people who are also growing and engaging in the game of life.
Yes.
So they're not perfect. And sometimes it's an expectation from society that people who are sharing views on social media are going to be like perfect individuals. But
And it's a false paradigm.
It's a false paradigm. No one is
Expecting
perfect.
people to be finished with their journey.
Someone-
Like, I might be talking now and I make some mistakes and express some cooked thoughts that in 2 months or 2 years I realize are actually quite wrong and misaligned.
and you realize that
if you watch this video and you're kind of expecting me to be a
Line's going
complete
down, eh?
human being, how do you expect me to be finished on my journey, bro?
at 27 years old.
So you can't have that expectation when you listen to these young influencers that they're complete
Or
human beings.
people in
It
general.
doesn't mean you don't call them out.
not even young people in general.
People in general. It doesn't mean you don't call them out, but like understand that people are on their journey.
But locally, someone like Openuel is dope. He's a man who I think is just unapologetically on his journey and discovery of self and his place in reality. And in that journey, he is rough around the edges sometimes, but I respect someone who's on their path.
Because that is
and
the journey.
honestly open to learning.
That's what life is about.
That's what life is about.
And even with those guys on the, what's that documentary?
the manosphere.
The manosphere,
Whatever,
inside the
whatever it's
manosphere,
called,
whatever. What I respect about each and every one of those guys,
As flawed as they may be,
all
which
of
they
them
are, a lot of them are
somewhat
flawed
extremist
in a
their
lot of
view.
ways, which we don't agree with, but yeah.
Yeah, but as a man, bro, being a person who's
As a
on
human
your
being.
shit,
As a human being.
as a human being,
Yeah.
really trying to figure out what's happening
And carve out a positive
developing
path.
your own philosophy of reality, as flawed as it and as wrong as it may be, and standing on it. Standing on it. That is dope. And what has to coexist with your standing on your philosophy is
Humbleness.
an openness to the fact that you don't know everything.
And you might be
So
wrong.
a humility,
Yeah,
and
humility.
an ability to consistently take feedback, assess it, is it right or is it wrong, while simultaneously being strong and holding to your views. But holding to your views doesn't mean you don't incorporate and change your views. But in general, as a man and as a person, to be someone who's actually progressing in reality, you have to make yourself vulnerable to being wrong. You have
You
to
do.
be able to like say, you know what? At this stage of my life, based with the information I've had, this is what I believe.
Let's put a pin on
and
that.
then you put that on.
Let's
You
put a
wear
pin on that. Being able to be vulnerable and be wrong. Vulnerability is kind of the ultimate strength.
Yes.
Because also to experience, to
100%.
grow and develop, growth is when you're growing, you're at the middle point between order and chaos. So you're kind of moving into things that you don't fully understand because you're expanding with some sort of grounding in what you don't understand. And in doing that, you're going to make mistakes, bro. You're treading on unwalked territory and you're going to misstep and you're going to fall. And that's how you kind of grow and experience the greatest things in life, but also to experience love. You
Gotta
gotta be
keep
able to
that
be
safe.
vulnerable. And vulnerability means you let your guard down and you accept that you can't control everything, but you're willing to step into this thing and pursue it with the best of your ability, with the
integrity.
hope that it's going to end up right.
And
But
with
it
the-
might not, and you might
with
get
the
hurt.
intention to align with that which is highest.
Boom.
Knowing that you're not your Jesus, bro. But you're really trying to get there, and as far as you know, this is the way you navigate.
And in doing that,
boom,
you might,
boom, boom,
you might
you
fuck
do
up.
some shit, you fall. But like, the only way you continue to grow is to not actually be fixated on the possibility of falling and stumbling. You're fixated on the fact that I am moving towards what's highest. I'm
It's like
trying.
what the managing director at my previous place where I worked, one of the things that he said that stuck with me and that he'd always emphasize in different ways as like an extremely intelligent and I think successful person that I respect as a man, bro, genuinely, is that failure paves the pathway to success, bro. Like,
But if failure paves the pathway to success, does failure
you don't
exist?
got that much wine play, don't be
Does
spinning the
failure
wine.
exists? Is there such a thing as failure?
It does exist, but it paves the pathway to success.
I think it doesn't.
So
I
as
think
you-
it exists as a
It
it's a
exists as a
label we
word.
put
It's
to
a label.
understand
I know what
something
you
that
mean.
appears to be
some white shit here, man. You good.
something that appears to be a deviation from the path you've envisioned. That's what you call quote unquote failure. But at the highest, when you're looking at the picture, the whole picture, your failures build you.
Yeah, but
which by
failure is also-
definition means
it's
that your
also a
failures
feedback loop
are good.
in reality.
To show you where
That
you need to
tells
correct.
you that maybe
Course
here
correct.
you're not properly aligned and you need to course correct.
But being shown you need to course correct is good.
It's good because that's how you grow.
That's actually what you want.
And that never really stops.
It doesn't.
As you grow and you move into terrains that you haven't navigated, bro, you're gonna fall, bro. You're gonna fall.
Which is why,
and it's okay to fall.
again, The Way of the Superior Man, a book by David Data, dope book.
Highly recommended. Good
One
shit.
of the lines that's
for the
repeated
bruise
in that
especially.
book is like, as a man, as a transcendent human being, you must live with an open heart. you need to like live with an open heart, bro. And that means embracing vulnerability. And like when you're vulnerable, you literally stand naked.
You stand
You're
naked.
naked in the crowd. Like, this is who I am. This is how I choose to move in the reality.
And you deal with the
And, like,
judgments. and
I
you
know
step
what I
forward
know, but I
regardless.
don't know. And like, I'm trying to learn. And like, okay, I think this is the path. Boom, I fall, I slip. Ha ha. People are cracking jokes. You fucked up. And you take the feedback and you incorporate it and you level up. And you just keep doing that. You need to live with an open heart, which means you need to be vulnerable. And actually, that's articulated in the book, The Way of the Superior Man. But another place where that view of vulnerability is explicitly articulated, all spiritual books is articulated from the lens of surrender. You must surrender. But also in Models
Models by Manson.
by Mark Manson, where he says, actually, that's an interesting book. We don't have to get too much into that.
Quote unquote.
But he says-
Also, again. Okay, yeah, state your point and then I'll
He
get into it.
basically states that vulnerability is the pathway to aligning with yourself as a man and putting yourself in the position to fulfill yourself in terms of your relationships with the feminine.
Boom, alright. But these perspectives, you see, this deep dive that you just did into vulnerability, which is
Yeah.
seen as a kind of not masculine thing that men in the manosphere might not acknowledge and be able to understand. These ideas that we've just articulated about vulnerability and the two books that we spoke to that we learned these ideas from, what are those books? What are they aiming to do?
Those two books, The Way of the Superior Man and Models by Mark Manson, essentially speak to being a man through the lens of pursuing engagement with the feminine, getting girls, and being able to show up in life. But they center around the theme of like how to deal with the feminine. And this one thing is another topic now. I thought I've had a lot, bro. You know, as you grow up, books before boys, they say to the girls, and then to the guys, they say books before girls. There's always this thing in life of where people try to make less significant the male pursuit of women, bro. Like, as guys, we want women, we're attracted to women. A big part of the male game is like figuring out how to get
And
women
beyond
you're
just attraction to women,
and people,
attraction to the feminine.
to the feminine. But society tries to make that feel like it's not important. Like, no, bro, your career is important, your family is important, but like this thing of you trying to get girls is not important. And I thoroughly
Or
disagree.
trying to
with that, bro.
connect with the feminine in a
Trying to
mutually
connect with the
beneficial
feminine.
and enjoyable
Mutually
way.
But
And the point
that's
is,
actually important.
as
bro.
men,
that matters in life.
as men who in our youth also acknowledged the depth and importance of that, we read those books. And through those books, by the people who were balanced as men and articulated how men can come to a healthy relation with the feminine, they speak to vulnerability as a key pillar to that. And the point that I'm trying to make here is that vulnerability is something that the feminine wants also, bro.
Yes,
But that's why I'm saying masculine and feminine at their essence aren't contradictory.
they're not.
And when you actually look at these things in a nuanced way and dive into the depth and develop a balanced perspective, these things coexist and dance together in a way that works.
But you see what we've just articulated? Those two books which talk to getting girls, Way of the Superior Man by
and
David
connecting with
Data,
the feminine.
and connecting with the feminine.
'Cause that's-
in a
that's kind of
broader
the paradigm that they look at it through.
But usually people actually get into that by just trying to get girls, and then it opens you to a bigger thing. And then Models by Mark Manson. And then who's the guy we said who we think is one of
Owen
a great
Cook.
transcendent
Owen Cook.
masculine influence, who's like balance between the two realms of trying to connect with the transcendent and trying to exist in the physical? Owen Cook, whose main content in the past was how to get girls. That's our manosphere. And like us.
Yeah.
That's our manosphere.
Quote unquote
And-
manosphere.
Quote unquote. But the point that I'm making there is a stream of content. There is a world of content online of males talking to men about how to be men that is actually positive, transcendent, and aligned with acquiring material riches and success. It actually does exist. It might not be the popular, but it does exist. It does exist. There is a pathway to be a cool, jiggy man who is connected to that which is transcendent and creating win-win dynamics with everyone you engage with, other men and other women.
Yo, man, the sun
that
is-
space does exist.
Yeah, that's real. That's real.
It exists.
That's real.
It exists.
This masculine feminine chat is probably something we'll speak about all the time because
It's beautiful.
I think it's infinitely deep and it's a fundamental part of the way that this reality is structured in terms of polarity. Positive, negative, night and day, masculine and feminine. So it's kind of a deep part of the structuring of reality that one can dive into on so many levels. So we always feel an inclination to dive into it. But right now, yo, the sun is coming up, bro. The
It's
forecast
hot.
are saying it might rain today. The sun is nice. I actually kind of want to swim, dog.
But that's low key.
I want to get in the water.
Hey, bro, that's nature was on our side, bro. The forecast
Yeah,
said
yeah.
it's gonna rain today. The sun is out.
Hey, mate, bro.
That's dope.
I think I'm
I'ma tap into the water too.
we might
take a
try a young
splash.
break. I think I'm gonna jump in the water quick.
Let's do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's go.
You can. Let me go behind there and jump in the water. Let's see what's happening there.
Let's
man.
see what's happening. Don't jump in with the mic, player. Put your mic on the.
Yeah, I should have
Put your
forget
mic
that.
down
Yeah, I'm gonna move with it a bit so I can talk. And then I'm gonna drop it. You wanna catch the cam there, dog? Catch the cam there just so you can catch when I'm jumping in. Think
I got
that'd be
you.
dope, you know?
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Just to show the peoples also, man. This is a dope scene.
It's a dope.
Y'all
scene.
gotta check out Magaliesburg
This is the
Magalies-
Magaliesburg Dome Pool.
Dome Pools. What area is it in?
It's in Moinoi Northwest. but it's the
Moinoi
Magaliesburg
Northwest
Dome
Dome Pools, man. Super sick. 4-kilometer
go.
hike, probably about
Let's
45
go.
minutes to an hour 30, depending on the pace that you walk at. Hey, maybe even 2 hours, man. 3 hours to be safe to get here. Then 3 hours back, but it's fucking beautiful. Keep it landscape. Yeah.
Oops.
This is the setup. I'm gonna take a jump. Can't dive in this motherfucker, might break my head.
Yeah, first you gotta, I think, walk in, feel the depth, and then you'll know if you can dive. You check those, like, that looks like steps that side. Natural steps. Yeah. This is beautiful, man. I like going into nature every once in a while and connecting with it. I had a phase where I was hiking a hell of a lot. I'll probably tap into that again. And why do I do that, bro? I don't know. When you're in nature, it just feels like you're connecting to something that's real and maybe a bit more. It's deeper than like being in the city and like listening to people and their perspectives. It connects you to something that's been around for millions of years. And there's a feeling to it, like you're kind of touching reality in a way. And that's a beautiful thing. How the water doing, dog?
Nice, brother.
It's nice. Alright. Superstar swimmer. Look at those strokes, baby. Look at those strokes. I taught this young nigga how to swim, by the way. That was me. You gotta respect it even if you choose to not love it. I'm well conducted, you niggas are far from it. Let's show you the scenes out here, man. It goes up there, there's some pools up there. There's more pools down there. Let's go. Let's go. Easy, easy, easy. We'll be back with some more chats and some more scenes. But I'm finna take a splash right now. Peace, 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 guys. Let's go. I was in the water about a minute or two ago. Not a minute or two, 10 minutes. Kind of chilly, but it's beautiful and refreshing. And it's natural waters. You can drink this water. Pour this shit up in my cup. Drink it a bit, you know what I mean? I know my system clean.
The water's
Natural
lovely, baby.
bacteria is good for the system.
Hey, the water's lovely, man.
It's lovely. It's
The
glorious.
clouds are pulling up a bit.
Might start feeling a bit cold, my boy, but
Yeah.
it'll evaporate.
Yeah, it's cool.
It'll evaporate.
Watch your phone there, man. It's getting wet. We outside. We changed up the setting a bit. You know, we stepped a bit further down the stream through some of the pools, and we just posting here now. I guess that's
nice,
what's
though.
up. It's nice. It's very nice, brother, man. Where we at? What you trying to talk about? What's on your mind, player?
Let's go. Let's go. We were talking about vulnerability, right? In terms of how vulnerability can be expressed in a way that's aligned with what one might consider to be
Disclaimer:
proper
if
masculine
I
expression.
jump around, I'm kind of cold, man. It's actually cold, so
I jump around,
yeah,
dog.
yeah. Let me allow
Jump
that.
around, dog.
Yeah. Hold on.
And the topic of vulnerability, when you talk about vulnerability, it can be misconceived as like, that's not some man shit.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And it also it's a similar sort of thing to when we talk about surrender in the religious context or the spiritual context. You know, you read the Bible, you read fucking Eckhart Tolle, you read the Tao Te Ching, and you listen to different
The
channel
Bhagavad Gita.
entities or whatever in the Bhagavad Gita.
and you listen to the teachings of Christ.
Teachings of Christ, and they all speak about the concept of surrender. Now, similar to the concept of vulnerability in the masculine chat, surrender seems like, isn't that weakness? Isn't that submission?
But it is the ultimate
I don't
thing.
want to surrender.
At the highest level, you have to surrender.
So my question is, you're saying at the highest level we have to surrender?
What do you
Ain't
surrender
that
to?
some pussy shit?
But what do you have to surrender to?
Wait, ain't that some pussy shit?
I don't know.
I'd say no. But look, there's 2 levels to surrender. There's surrender where surrender, when people hear the word surrender, and you know the Bible and teachings of Jesus and all spiritual context will tell you to surrender to the Holy Spirit. It seems like surrender, by definition, one side of looking at it is like you kind of give up yourself and it seems subservient. It seems like you're making yourself subordinate. But there's another aspect of surrender, the empowering aspect of surrender, where it says that surrender is not necessarily making yourself smaller. But what surrender is understanding that there's a larger flow. There's a bigger thing beyond you. And to open yourself to that thing, you surrender. But surrender means opening yourself up to that thing is allowing yourself to realize your identity as that thing.
And as a part of that thing.
That's why Jesus says,
also why
I and the Father are one.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you surrender, this is the philosophy I've articulated in my mind to allow surrender to be a position of empowerment. When you surrender, you become one with the Father. Not that you bow down to the Father and you become weak. The idea of surrender to reality and what it is, it doesn't mean you like let go and you don't proactively do your thing. But this idea of surrender, it's articulated in most religions, bro, like Christianity, also like you said, Bhagavad Gita, Tao Te Ching. And the story of Christ, of course, also in Stoicism. There's the idea of letting reality be what it is. People sometimes misinterpret the philosophy of Stoicism as just being hard and like unemotional. Unemotional. But when you read the Stoic philosophers, Marcus Aurelius and Socrates and Plato, a lot of what they say is... Not Plato. It's Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca.
Okay, yeah.
Socrates and Plato, I don't know
Socrates-
their particular school of thought,
Socrates is part of the Stoicism.
but it's
school of
Marcus
thought.
Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus.
But a lot of what they articulate is an understanding that part of living a decent life is being able to accept your life as it is. And it's not a call to not like proactively engage in reality, but to be satisfied, you need to kind of accept the fact that things are what they are. And really be okay with whatever things are.
But
That is kind of surrender to whatever reality is.
things as they are is the most effective strategy for someone who's trying to be proactive in the reality and doing things. Do you see what I mean? Because also as you engage with complexity in reality, things are going to go wrong sometimes, and you're going to make mistakes. But if you can't accept things for what they are, Then you don't learn from them.
then you don't learn from the mistakes, and the mistakes hurt you.
Yes.
And they are failures, and they take away from you. But if you accept things as they are, the mistakes and the failures, you accept them as they are, and it's fuel. And instead of it's a corny saying, but instead of getting bitter about the challenges,
better.
You get better. You get bitter or better. You choose.
And that's again, you know, there's the idea that life is it's not about circumstances, it's about how you respond to them. It's not necessarily about your circumstances, it's about your state of being.
Yeah.
That's basically saying, like you say, it's either you get better or better from your circumstances. It's the underlying philosophy that in the end, it's literally not about what happens to you. You decide
About
who
how
you
you
are
respond
by
to
how
it.
you respond to it.
That's true.
And that's where the value
But
is.
also, what is being able to being able to respond to things in a way that you want to respond to things? So even if things are within the metrics of reality, maybe negative and not really
Not
going
good.
well, how do you respond to it in a way that's positive? What is that? To respond to things in a proactive manner that makes sense for you and what you're trying to achieve in your life, you need to be conscious. You need to be present in the moment. So that what you do, you're not impulsive. You're not just acting and then you regret. You are responding. There's a proactive and conscious response as opposed to just like acting out impulsively. I don't know if response
hear
is
you.
the word. There's a proactive creation
Space.
instead of a response.
Space. It's not
You
just
creating
stimulus response.
Yeah.
This is also in the, what is that book? 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Like if you look at an
wrote
amoeba
that?
or
Who's
like
the author?
natural like plants, amoeba, lower life forms, lower life quote unquote, whatever that means. There's stimulus and response. But
Yeah.
what consciousness allows you to do is it's not just stimulus response, but there's a space in between stimulus response where
Well,
you
you
can
can
be
decide.
present.
and decide.
Yeah.
And when you have the power to decide,
But
the Stoic philosophy basically says you can always decide for a thing to work for you. Like you can always decide to see failure as success.
or as a part of the pathway to success.
And that's the idea of judgments. Part of the Stoic philosophy is that the pain you feel in life, the happiness you feel in life, and all your emotions are not based on external reality, but are based on your judgments of external reality. And it circles back
It's based on your judgment.
to the primary philosophy of all religions is that like everything is interpretation in a sense. You know what I mean? Can you be happy in a storm? And this is a question I've asked myself. Would you rather be, and this I ask this question because it helps allow you to think about what you want your philosophy of life to be.
Sun is
Would you
coming
rather
up.
be happy and joyful in hell? Or would you rather be depressed in heaven?
happy and joyful in hell.
And if you'd rather be happy and joyful in hell as opposed to depressed in heaven, what does that mean?
Also, how do you guarantee?
What does
at
that mean?
least
What happened? What matters? It's not
how
the
it's your-
outside.
It's how you respond.
It's your state.
It's your state.
Because to be happy in hell means that your state is not dictated by external circumstances.
But then
And
you
if you're
can be-
depressed in heaven, it also means your state is not dictated by external
But the
circumstances.
point is, you can be happy in hell.
Yes.
And there's a way of existing where you can be happy in hell
How?
and happy in heaven.
But like
How?
I think in my mind, the heaven is just being happy. Because then you can always
So the heaven
be
be okay.
It's actually not on the outside.
But
the happy is it's not necessarily the word happy, but it's being okay where you are. Which I think is being happy because it's when you're okay with where you are, you're comfortable. Happiness is comfort, man. The Stoics have a word, man. What's the word? I'm trying to remember it. I'm not remembering the word, but it's the good life as opposed to the good mood. Do you see that distinction? It's almost distinguishing like a genuine, fulfilled happiness and joy as opposed to pleasure. The good life as opposed to the good mood. Eudaimonia.
But also the
I think is
idea,
the word.
the idea of a good life. What is a good life?
You see that also the idea of like not only feeding the things that satisfy your instant gratification and delay of gratification. There's the idea that the things that are most worth it in life require like a delay of gratification and reward. That's like the good life and not just the pleasurable life in the instance. I think
Where
not
the
that
highest values come from
the
things that are beyond just the instant gratification of
but
pleasure.
I don't think it's about forfeiting instant gratification or pleasure.
Yes,
It's
yes,
about
it's both of
being
them.
able to not need instant gratification. So
Or you-
if
or
instant
you-
gratification comes, I enjoy it.
Or being able to
If
have
it
both.
doesn't come, I'm still in a good state.
Yes.
But it's fundamentally saying your state of being becomes independent from what's happening externally. It's independent. It's unconditional.
So although you might have a preference for the instant gratification
And you like it and it's fun,
when it's not there,
you can
you're
still be okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
The good life as opposed to the good mood. And I like that distinction because it separates there's two veins of good feelings. There's two different energies of good feelings. There's like the good mood / pleasure,
In the moments.
which is like in the moment,
it's now
it's
it's here.
instant, it's low, and it's degenerate.
It's kind of
Because you
animalistic.
can take cocaine and feel good.
Yeah.
You can like misuse and deceive someone and feel good. But then there's a higher level of good, which is quote unquote high vibrational. And what that means to me is it translates across space and time. It's something it's a goodness that works for you across time and
Yeah.
space. You know what I mean? It's a sustainable form of goodness.
Sustainable.
It's not here now and then there's a fall off tomorrow. Or tomorrow you need to pay back. You get drunk, tomorrow there's the hangover.
Yeah, and generally those sustainable forms of goodness, those are clean goodnesses.
They're clean, bro.
They're clean.
And
they don't weigh heavy on like your body and your system in terms
And your
of toxicity,
conscience.
but they don't also weigh heavy on your conscience, like you're saying, and your state of being and sense of yourself and your value.
And what are those things? Those, when you
I think
ask
it's
the question,
moral. I think
it ends up,
it gets back to morality, bro.
it gets back to the moral realm. But the idea of the moral realm, I think, part of it, morality, when preached in a holier than thou sense, which is the way religion tends to kind of sell morality. It feels like judgment, it feels like criticism. It almost appears as if the moral path is not the dope path, bro. Sometimes the way it's sold is that
It's not so.
to be moral,
you gotta be in a
you
fucking
must
cave
lose.
somewhere. And you must maybe
And
be
you must
poor.
be in a cave somewhere, and you must be poor.
And detached from the world, and not
And you
have
must
a nice connection with the
turn the
feminine.
other cheek.
You can't have a dope
And
connection
you
with the
can't have,
feminine.
like hands.
Yeah.
And like sex is not a good thing.
That's not cool.
But
No
I
one wants that.
believe proper expression of the moral realm is actually joyful and fulfilling and enhancing and expansive, and it's actually a happy life, bro.
Yeah, but I think that's what you achieve from the moral life. So
we still outside, baby. What you reading right now, brother man? What are you tapping into right now through the books? At the moment, like I've told you, bro, previously I only started reading properly like 4 years ago when I started working, because I never used to read in high school. And I used to, when I started reading, I was on this read one book, finish it type shit. But now I'm on a wavelength of like, I'm exploring a different kind of way of consuming information, where I'm reading like 2 books at once, listening to 2 audio books at once too. So there's basically 4 books in my rotation. Maybe that's inefficient or whatever, but I'm exploring that. I'm reading Conversations with God. First time that we read that for the first time, probably like
the
grade
mic
11.
closer, dog.
We read that for the first time, probably grade 11
Grade
matric.
11 or 12.
And that was a very influential book. That was a very influential book.
in
That
our
book is
lives
profound.
as young people.
Conversations with God. I'm rereading that 3-book trilogy, and then the new book I'm reading is Joy Dispenza, Becoming Superhuman. Joy Dispenza, he's a neuroscientist. I don't know what he is, but he's a scientist. I think he's a doctor. He's a doctor / scientist, and he basically does an exploration into scientifically mapping out through brainwaves, trying to scientifically validate spiritual and transcendent experiences. So they do ECG scans on the brain to show how through meditation, focusing on your energy centers and breath work and trying to unlock your heart center, you actually change the frequency of your brain waves.
It's happening in different wavelengths.
Not just the frequency, wavelengths.
Yeah.
You can go into like alpha brain waves and theta brain waves, which you go to when you're more relaxed and asleep. And you can also go into gamma brain waves. This is like super consciousness, very fast frequency. And he also shows how breathwork and meditation not only changes the vibration or the frequency of your brain waves, but also changes the synchronicity. In a normal brain state, normal consciousness, which is beta brain waves, that's a frequency. Generally, one's frequency is in the beta state, but it's also not synchronized. Where your brain waves is like, it's many lines, they vary.
Haphazardous.
But when you kind of tap
not
into a
ordered.
state of presence, they become
Kind of,
synchronized.
there's a rhythm.
And then you correlate that to spiritual experiences, where you show when it becomes synchronized, you feel love and you feel joy.
But it basically adds a kind of scientific and
backing
logical
to it.
rigor to
Yeah.
the ideas of
So it's dope.
spiritual breathwork and so on.
But then in terms of stuff I'm listening to reality transfer things, some hippie shit. I've listened to that before. This is like my second time listening to it. And then I'm listening to, I know you said you read it recently.
Yeah,
We've always had this book at home growing up. I never read it, but I'm listening to it now, bro. Long Walk to Freedom
put
by
you on
Nelson
it, eh?
Mandela. Because the idea is like,
Classic.
we want to know the people who allowed us to become free as Africans in South Africa. And Nelson Mandela, bro, as you read or listen to Long Walk to Freedom, you get to appreciate that the people of our struggle were actually brilliant individuals.
high
Brilliant in the
integrity,
world, but also transcendent in terms of morality.
high
bro.
integrity and high intelligence.
Yes.
I mean, you look at the leaders of the ANC towards the end of apartheid and into our free democracy. The leaders at that point were Nelson Mandela and Oliver Tambo. Oliver Tambo slightly before 94, and Mandela, of course, after 94.
Not slightly before, but
Yeah,
before. Yeah.
And those leaders of the ANC, bro, when you look into their story, their education and so on, they were high integrity, but also highly intelligent people. Nelson
Smart
Mandela
people.
and Oliver Tambo, I also only discovered this when I read or listened to Long Walk to Freedom for the first time
They founded the first black law firm in South Africa.
Bro, like they were the kind of people who start a law firm as black people under apartheid. They were actually intelligent
And
individuals.
being that person, they were able to articulate the struggles and challenges of the black African in South Africa and make that real to the world in a way that they could support the anti-apartheid movement.
sanction
so that
apartheid.
We and the ANC and Africans and black South Africans in South Africa could overcome the apartheid government. And sometimes it's this perspective that some of the people who are there at the process of our liberation,
Yeah.
some of the leaders at that time, like Nelson Mandela, might have been sellouts and soft because they weren't as hard and super aggressive and like didn't say screw the people who oppressed us and the enemies, take
And
them out of the
revolt
country,
against them.
let's take everything. Some people see that as like a sellout position, but we need to understand that this was a position, a transcendent position of non-racialism and building a society where we can all exist as human beings, independent of
With
the color of our
dignity.
skin and based on the content of our character. It's part of that transcendent ideal. And someone like Mandela embodied that transcendent ideal after being the militant youth that formed the military wing in the ANC.
Mkhonto Wesizwe.
Yes, so it
He
wasn't
was actually
the
one of the
founder.
founders of Mkhonto
So in the
Wesizwe.
50s or 60s, the ANC always had a non-racial and non-violent type of
That was part of
perspective.
the non-racial and non-violent perspective. Again, this is just insights from Long Walk to Freedom and general discussions I've had with people in the family and broader than that.
Yeah.
The philosophy of the ANC was non-violent. That's how the ANC, it was founded on that sort of principle.
Yes, and Nelson Mandela and the group of people at that time, the youth at that time, who formed Mkhonto Wesizwe, kind of spoke up against the predominant ANC philosophy of the time and the elders in the institution and the organization to say, no. This thing of non-violence, we've been doing it for 50, how many years?
However
and
many
it hasn't
decades.
led our people to
It
freedom.
hasn't worked.
The quote-unquote oppressors have established and formalized an apartheid government,
And it's-
which was formalized in 1947-48. And they're only getting worse. At this point, to achieve this ideal of non-racialism, we need to take up arms and fight.
But
And
you
they
see-
formed Mkhonto Wesizwe, which is the military wing of the ANC and the struggle towards the freedom of our people against the apartheid government. That military wing was founded by a young Mandela,
Who
in
was the
pursuit-
person?
in pursuit of the ideal of non-racialism.
Who was the person that later brought forth the concept
And-
of like trying to have a rainbow nation, truth and reconciliation, and not having a revolution in which the white man or the former oppressor, we flip the script and we become the oppressors. And a thought I've not heard this really articulated in general discussion, was that the perspective that Mandela took, of course there's one idea that it's selling out, but what
Limited
Mandela
view.
did and what the ANC did at the
And
turn of
committed
apartheid too was actually a transcendent ideal, bro. If you were
was.
to imagine, now this is an extreme comparison,
It's the equivalent of love
But-
your enemy.
love
Christ,
love
your
thy
enemy
neighbor
on
as
a
thyself.
political, within the political arena.
If Jesus
the
was a
equivalent of that.
politician in times of apartheid in the ANC, he would establish something like a Truth and Reconciliation Act. He would try to have
By the way,
a
it's bro.
kind of freedom post-apartheid that is win-win for both
Let's draw
races.
Let's draw that parallel a bit. We're not even like extremely religious, super Christian people, although we grew up in a Christian household, but we see the value in this.
Yes.
Christ carrying his cross, being smacked, abused, violated at the highest level, hung on a cross, dying, crying out to the Lord, and he says, Father, forgive them for they know not what they're doing. He forgives his enemy. Nelson
Bro.
Mandela acknowledged the need for violence to achieve the ideal of non-racialism. Arrested by the enemy that he wants to create
Call
an
the
ideal
terrorist.
society of non-racialism with.
Call the terrorist
Call the terrorists.
for holding on to higher ideals that view everyone as equal. Put
Locked
into
up.
prison.
27, bro. We're 27 years old. We turned 28 this year.
That's a dope.
Locked up for 27 years.
27 years.
27 years.
On an island.
Comes out and says it's time. What we put into motion brought us here to a place where we can move forward and closer to realizing this ideal of non-racialism.
And forgive them.
Let's work together.
Forgive them.
We're not going to kill you and impose the law of the jungle and
flip the script.
and impose a
the
primal
script.
primal
script.
idea of justice. You killed my child, I'm going to kill yours. No, we're not going to do that.
We're going to break the cycle.
We're going to break the cycle, bro. And stop the back and forth and the tit for tat and say, we're going to create a society for all of us. Let's address what happened in the past and create a non-racial society.
And allow black people to become equal players in the society and acknowledge our inherent worth and dignity and humanity,
but not at
without-
your expense.
not at the expense of the person who was our oppressor.
And not
That
at our expense.
is transcendent, bro. That is Christ-like. That is Christ-like, and that is powerful. And another thing, when I read I Write What I Like, which is Steve Biko.
Steve Biko.
This was about a year or two ago when I first read it. Steve Biko, we know him as a revolutionary, which he was. And I don't know, the kind of modern perception of revolutionary, I think Julius Malema. But when you read I Write What I Like, Steve Biko's, the core of his philosophy was developing a non-racial world and a non-racial South Africa. Why was Steve Biko so into black consciousness? Because he saw black consciousness as the means to establishing a non-racial society where race doesn't matter. Why was black consciousness the means to establishing a non-racial society? Because their history of apartheid, oppression, and the colonial regime created an inferiority complex in black people. So the population that Biko was dealing with of Africans at the time
had an inferiority
viewed themselves
complex.
as inferior to the white man.
Yeah.
And because we viewed ourselves as inferior, white man was boss, we needed a black consciousness movement to compensate for the inferiority complex.
So that we can
Not-
know that we can exist on a playing field.
But not to know that we're superior to the white man, but to know that
We
all men are
men.
equal.
All men are equal in the eyes of the Lord, but we're all together. And come to a position also by knowing that we don't view anyone as superior to us. And the people who,
But we don't view ourselves as inferior.
yes, and the people who in the past oppressed us and tried to create a reality that would make us inferior and make them superior, they can understand that we are not inferior and they are not superior. But to create that, we have to know that also we are not inferior. And Biko's idea was the ideal society is a non-racial society. But black consciousness seeks to make us understand that there was a conscious effort to make us feel inferior that manifests itself in a lot of what African and black people have.
How we perceive ourselves, or how we perceived ourselves. And again, this is
And that's,
in Long Walk to Freedom.
but that's what has to be, that's part of what needed to be challenged.
Yes, and in Long Walk to Freedom, beautiful picture Mandela paints, bro. I was listening to this, I was like, boom. Mandela, after the formation of the ANC, they were flying around Africa to establish relations with other African nations and push the agenda of the ANC
Frontline
of
states
freeing
and
South
so on.
Africa, and also figure out how Mkhonto we Sizwe is gonna maybe get training from other states, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And I don't know what country he was in. He was in a country in Africa. And he speaks about a moment where him, as one of the leaders at the ANC, at the forefront of forming Mkhonto we Sizwe, he's from South Africa. And in South Africa, it's a racist society. He'd only seen white pilots. And he's walking onto a plane in another African country. I don't know if it was Angola or whatever. I'm not sure. But he's walking onto a plane. Nelson Mandela saw a black pilot. And he had the thought in his mind where it was like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yo, son.
Hey, that's a black pilot. Am
Hold
I
on.
safe?
Hold on.
And he articulates that to say he caught himself saying, I don't think I'm safe because there's a black pilot. And he saw that programming,
Yeah.
that apartheid programming that taught our people to view ourselves as inferior.
But also it consciously attempted to instill that.
That's what the
Where
structure
African
was.
people
The color bar.
can only have a certain level of education.
color bar.
You can only stay in certain areas. You can only do
And you can-
certain jobs.
you can only reach certain
assume
levels.
A certain level of citizenship.
Yes.
And you can't even be a full citizen of South Africa, bro.
But to
you can't
understand-
even operate certain business
To
types of businesses.
understand how deep the inferiority complex was, you need to understand that Mandela, as the revolutionary he was,
Recognized it
as a leader
as
of
something
black
he had to overcome.
consciousness, as a leader of ANC, himself had a moment of perceiving us as inferior, where he saw a black pilot, and the conditioning of apartheid led him to see a black pilot and say, "Hey, I don't think this is safe." And he caught himself and said, "This is exactly why."
And this is the guy who formed the
We need black
Umkhonto we Sizwe,
consciousness.
which was the military wing that assumed arms against the apartheid government and also led us into our democracy. And also, Steve Biko, one of the people at the forefront of the idea of black consciousness
just
and
had to
conscientizing
kill.
the,
They had to kill him.
conscientizing, they had to kill him. He was too much.
They had to, dog.
The guy at the forefront of that also, like we were saying, the foundation of black consciousness is that as African and black people, we have to recognize that there was an active and conscious attempt, which was successful to a certain extent, to make black people feel inferior.
So-
and we have to acknowledge that so we can shine a light on that, be conscious of that, move beyond that, and play on a field where we can create a non-racial world.
And we're all equal, black and white. So black consciousness was essentially, from the point of view of Steve Biko. I haven't read into all the black consciousness philosophers, but from the point of view of Steve Biko, it was a necessary compensation that had to be instilled because we perceived ourselves as
yo,
inferior.
With all of this said, I write what I like. Steve Biko, it's a collection of his writings when he was the leader of the student movements between his early 20s and his late 20s, or maybe even early 30s. But the level of that man's ability to articulate the struggles and the position and plight of the black South African and African, and the way forward from that towards a liberated Africa, South Africa, and world where we can play on an equal footing and create an awesome society with everyone. His level of articulation of that was very high level. It wasn't the surface. And I say this as someone who, hey man, I've studied a lot. I've delved into the ideas of what intellect might be. And in terms of what intellect is and might be, Steve Biko's ability to articulate the plight of the black man and the way forward was second to none. And these are the people that we were led by and allowed
Steve
us
Biko,
to liberate
also Nelson
ourselves.
Mandela, also Oliver Tambo.
And Nelson Mandela and Oliver Tambo, they founded the first black law firm in South Africa. But the point is, the people who led us and were at the forefront of articulating our way forward and actually leading us into that way forward were very intelligent human beings who espoused and aimed for ideals.
Higher ideals. And in order to convince, which is what the ANC did essentially, to convince the Western world, who are white people,
And the world at
who
large.
were sympathetic in general to an apartheid government
Hey,
that
time is running, eh?
originates
Gotta
from
wrap it.
people who are descendants of the Dutch. To convince them that no, we're not going to create a communist society where we nationalize all the resources and kick you guys
We're
out
not a threat.
and treat you
We're not
like
a threat.
second-class citizens.
We're
We're
not
not
a
going to
threat.
flip the script on you and do what you did to us. They had to convince the Western world to say,
Although
sanction
it
the
might be justified, but
It
we're
is
not.
justified from a particular paradigm.
We're not gonna do that.
But the people who were able, like the people who freed us, had to be able to convince
We're
the
at
Western
forefront of
world
our freedom.
that we're trying to create a win-win dynamic. Well, it's not necessarily about us or about you, but it's about all of us.
And in this modern day
That's
and age,
transcendent, bro.
that's what it took to bring us here. And
That's
going forward,
transcendence.
that's what we need to get us to the ideal of a rainbow nation and a society that serves all the people who live within it. And like, as young people, in our selection of leaders and in cultivating ourselves to be the type of people who can, in whatever small way we can, whether it's in your family or your workplace, or maybe politically, contribute and lead the country forward towards realizing these ideals of a beautiful world where everyone has dignity and is respected. We need to be on the level that the leaders who led us here were on, and they were on a transcendent level. I think that's a good place to wrap it up, man. Battery
sure.
might die.
We here at the Dome Pools, man. Moi Noi Dome Pools.
It's
a
amazing.
beautiful day.
Maybe one more thing, yo. This is dope ass shit. It's dope as fuck. We always endorse this type of vibe and type of energy. We do this like once every 2 months, a month, or something like that. We do it here and there. But if y'all are particularly resonant with this type of energy and you want to tap into this vibe, feel free to reach out, and we can do some shit sometime. Just know it's gonna be a bit of a fucking hike. It gets a bit rugged and stuff like that. But
intense.
if you want to tap into this, feel free to holler. It's some dope shit.
Tap into this, have a good time, and make it cool. You know what I mean? Make it cool. That's
Let's
what we
go.
on.
Let's go.
I'm whipping around in that 600 acre Lego. You gotta own 600 acres here, dog, and talk about it.
She might decide to say no to me now, but say yes to me later. Let's go. That's a quote from a fire ass Drake song.
Hey, let's pack up and move, player. Pipe is dead.
Yo, moment of truth, my boy.
That was me and the pro, chopping it up. I. It's the two of us. And yeah.